Hi everyone. I'm not dead. It's been a while and I know I say this every time, but I'm sorry. Life gets in the way, but it means that I'm back with another video and it specifically means that I get to talk about something that honestly I've been stewing on for a while. Let's talk about my complicated relationship with Pokemon. Um so I've been playing Pokemon since I was a kid. Like started back in the day, red, blue, played both of them because I was a spoiled only child who was raised in the 90s. Played yellow, and I don't really have like concrete memories of those games. They existed, but I don't really remember the games having an effect on me. The anime did, however. The Pokemon anime was formative to me, and that really does deserve to be its own video, which is not a cop out, mind you. Now, I played up until Crystal, and loved Crystal. Crystal was a game changer because then you have a little female character. And while I didn't really feel, the gender dysphoria of only having to play as a boy, it was amazing to be able to play as a girl. Another game changer was Ruby and Sapphire. Now, I have always said that Ruby Sapphire is one of my favorite Pokemon games because it's true. Just there was so much about the aesthetic of Ruby and Sapphire that I loved. Making little secret bases, being able to choose two separate bikes. One of them could do bunny hops. The customizable aspects of it, the contest, everything. I loved so much about Ruby Sapphire and that generation. I loved the starters. I loved so many of the movesets. I loved that each city had its own feeling and everything like that. I loved the story. I loved all of it. There was so much about Ruby and Sapphire that for the age I was at the time with my Glacier Ice Game Boy Advance, that made that the perfect game. And after Ruby and Sapphire, I stopped playing Pokemon. I did that thing that most girls who are nerdy do is, you're told by your parents and everyone that you'll grow out of it. So I stopped playing. I can't say that it wasn't a part disinterest. I don't know at that time. I mostly know that around that time my dad was going to a church that didn't allow me to like Harry Potter or Pokemon, and my aunts definitely weren't interested in any of the weird Asian stuff I brought into the house because they all thought it was pornography. So I honestly did not pick up a Pokemon game for, at that point, a decade. And a friend actually got me a DS, and he got me Pokemon Platinum. So quite a jump there, but Pokemon Platinum is the game that I resold my soul to Pokemon with. It was amazing. I loved everything about that region. I loved everything about Sinnoh. I loved Giratina. To this day, one of my favorite legendaries. It's now a running gag in my friend group that I'm the person who looks super, super cute in game, and I'm surrounded by evil, terrifying Pokemon. So let's keep that in mind. Sinnoh was a game changer. Loved Platinum, loved everything about it, logged hundreds and hundreds of hours in that game, including my B button Piplup, who bested God, because that's how I am. Picked on up with Black and White 2. Again, well, perfect games. Loved those games. Anyone who's like Black and White 2 were in good games. They do not know what they're talking about. They're amazing games. Now, Black and White 2 were great. I played X and Y. X and Y, again, another game changer. And I've talked about X and Y a lot, how important it was to have a little African American looking character who was very fashionable and who could skate around. Loved that game. Black and X and Y was just, and especially having that like friend aspect of it. That was one of the first games I was really playing like with my friends. Loved that game. Now, if you've noticed, I've been saying a lot of positive things. That's about to stop. My few recent years with Pokemon has been fraught to say the least. Sun and Moon, outside of giving me Rowlett, was a hot major disappointment of a game that felt for the first time like Pokemon was taking a step backwards. And Pokemon as a company has always had a hard time balancing its two very distinct audiences. One being Japanese children, and two being late 20 something, 30 something year old adults who have a disposable income and are high on nostalgia. That's another thing I want you to keep a pin in. So Sun and Moon to me felt like the first misstep. This one felt like this game was for Japanese boys, which is why I, a late 20 something American, did not like it, except for Rowlett, who is literally perfect, and I will accept no slander. Ultra Sun and Moon somehow made a bad game worse. I don't know how that's possible, but somehow they did. I don't even want to spend words on the ultimate disappointment that was um, Alpha Sapphire Omega Ruby because I loved Ruby Sapphire. Don't know how they managed to make so many steps backwards, except for flying around on a Latias. That was, I have to admit, kind of neat. That is the only positive thing I have to say about that game. Again, I could devote many, many hours to how much I don't like these games. And then everything seemed to be okay. Out shining in the distance was Sword and Shield. And in my opinion, and I might be wrong, I mean, I could be wrong, Sword and Shield is one of the best Pokemon games that has ever existed. I remember how laggy it was, how buggy it was, people just phasing through each other, bikes flying into the air because it did not know how to handle the internet bandwidth load of all of these players. But from story to characters to Pokemon to everything, I loved everything about Sword and Shield. I even liked the DLCs that everyone was mad they had to pay money on. Sure, they should have been part of the game, but Nintendo has to make money, and it worked. It worked. We spent money. I completed my Galar decks and both DLC dexes, and I am champion of that world. I kicked Leon in the face and said, "This is my land now," and I've had an amazing time in it. I've easily logged almost 500 hours in Pokemon Sword and Shield, which is just slightly under my 300 hours in X and Y. You can tell I have favorites. So Sword and Shield was always going to be hard to, play second act to. It was always going to be difficult. And the Pokemon fan base, especially here in the US, has always been one that doesn't seem to understand what Pokemon is and who Pokemon is for. Which I have to say, in the words of Patrick Willems, a much better YouTuber than I will ever be, that this is a game made for children. And I don't say that to take away my genuine love for it. I don't say that to take away from your genuine love for it. I don't say that to take away from anyone's genuine love for it. But I think what we always forget with these things, and I say that as someone who's made a living off of taking media way too seriously, is that sometimes we forget that these are games made for children. They were never meant to be Monster Hunter. It was never meant to be Legend of Zelda. It was never meant to be, well, maybe it was meant to be Legends of Zelda. We'll get there. It was never meant to be Skyrim. These are games made for children. Which is why when Pokemon Legends Arceus was announced, I was so conflicted. I don't play a lot of open world games. I have ADHD. If you give me an open field, I will go feral and you will never see me again. That happened very early on in Sword and Shield for me, where I quickly abandoned main plot, dove into the wild area, and people did not see me again for a long time until I emerged out of the wilderness with an overpowered team ready to punch God in the face. I just never really liked open world games like that. I like having a story that can carry me along. I am very much someone who just gets lost in the sauce. And yeah, I'll go feral in the woods and you will never see me again. I will just be out there making curry, faffing around, doing God knows what. So when Pokemon announced an open world game, I was skeptical. I was, however, surrounded by people with boners the size of Texas who were excited for a game that was going to be like Monster Hunter. That including two of my friends. So I bought the game. I chose my favorite starter, and through a bunch of marketing that had me equal parts very concerned and very excited about this game, I bought the game. I want to talk about the marketing for a second because the marketing of Pokemon Legends Arceus very much leans into that this is really setting things in a different direction. That Pokemon are not your friends, they're scary, horrifying monsters who can hurt you. Hence why everyone's Hisuian Pokedex entry is terrifying. Like Basculegion, who has watched all of his friends die and is now angry. Or Zorua, who's one of my favorite Pokemon, who was banished into the frost because they were misunderstood and they all died and now are ghosts, which led to the iconic footage of a Hisuian Zorua, being examined by, UPOV in one of the commercials. And then that guy just gets murdered by a Zoroark. Like, it's not even ironic. It's not even funny. Like, his last images are of a giant fucking Zoroark. That guy's dead. He's dead. Like, I remember sharing that with my friend to be like, oh, he dead. All the comments on that are, he's gone. Like, that's the last thing that man saw. And he's, yeah, poof. So I played Arceus. And we're gonna spoil a lot of Arceus. We're also gonna spoil a lot of other games, so I'm sorry. I don't like Legends Arceus. I'm finally brave enough to say I don't like it. I don't like this game. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm actually gonna tell you a few reasons why. Shocker. One, it's buggy as hell. It's just, I was playing last night, and I know I just said that I don't like it. I keep trying to give it chances. We'll get into that too. I was playing last night, and I saw a Gyarados in the sky, and it was flying like it was a robot. It wasn't like undulating gracefully. It was like each frame of it was crashing as it was trying to fly over a mountain. It looked so derpy. It was almost funny. Um, I thought that I'd like all the character designs, and turns out I was wrong. As much as I like male wife Cynthia, who we're going to get to, we're going to talk a lot about male wife Cynthia. I felt nothing looking at a lot of these character designs. It just felt like, who can we take from a generation that everyone loves and throw them in willy nilly? Which leads us to one of my biggest issues with modern Pokemon, which is intertextuality. Intertextuality is a thing that happens when a long running series will make a reference or a callback to another point in the series and basically just do it to cash in on those nostalgia tokens. Star Wars does it all the time. Look at all of these side projects. They're about characters who we never really worried about their backstory. And now these things have stories and they're awful. Like the Millennium Falcon story actually now being a ship that was once a droid who wanted droid freedom, but now is imprisoned in a ship, which is such sad, sad irony that it hurts. Pokemon has a serious intertextuality problem, which takes us into some spoilers for Pokemon Legends Arceus that you have been warned. I want to talk about the problem with Ingo. For those of you that don't know, in Nimbasa, which is another city in another region, there's a subway, a battle subway. And the two subway masters are Ingo and Emmett. They are twins. And with the gym leader of Nimbasa City, they form the Nimbasa Trio, and they're phenomenal. Ingo and Emmett are usually side characters that, unless you do a lot of battle subway, you don't know anything about them, nor do you care. So when you are approached by the worst character ever in Melly, which you guys don't get to see Heated Amanda very often. Congratulations to this taste of Heated Amanda. When you meet worst character ever Melly, and you're introduced to this character named Ingo, and you're thinking they wouldn't possibly, those cowards, and you see Ingo just receding hairline, haggard and miserable, you're like, what the hell? And then he starts talking, and he mentions that he has no memory of how he got there. Because, mind you, Pokemon Legends Arceus is a Pokemon isekai, and apparently Arceus is just yanking people. Apparently, that's how Arceus works now. He's just yanking people. And he got Ingo. And the entire time I was listening to Ingo talk and how much he feels like there's someone else who looks like him that he can't remember, that there are all these words and phrases that he knows that don't have a tangible purpose in the land that he lives in anymore. That there's all these things that he feels like he's attached to and doesn't remember. I was sad in a way that I forgot video games can make me sad. And not for any direct reason, not because of Pokemon Legends Arceus, but because I kept thinking that Ingo has a brother named Emmett who is probably lost without him. That was a cheap move that no one needed to make, that was unnecessary, and yes, I'm getting very passionate about a video game made for children. It just wasn't needed. And no one seemed to think about the implications of that outside of a cheap tug at heartstrings. Pokemon's done this a few times, including once with Grimsley in Sun and Moon, and another time with Colress in Ultra Sun and Moon. Grimsley is particularly egregious because unless you tie 13 strings together, he's just a random guy who's cosplaying as Byakuya Kuchiki somewhere in Hawaii. But if you know in the manga what happened to him, it's horrifying because in the manga, he loses his Pokemon to the Mafia. Not Team Rocket, just the Mafia. He loses his Pokemon due to gambling debts and he had to flee because he owes so much money, which is why he's in Alola looking like a casual Byakuya Kuchiki. So rather than him just being a random character who's there, they're either super promising and hoping that you know that piece of manga information, or random character that you may vaguely recognize. That's just lazy, poor storytelling, and I don't like that from Pokemon. Pokemon Legends Arceus is full of that, and I think the worst part isn't just that all of these characters seem to be tied to other characters that you care a lot more about in Sinnoh later, like Volo or male wife Cynthia. Volo ends up being your villain, which is not a shock to anyone who has a brain cell. It is not as subtle as Light Yagami's turn in Death Note, now that I've put it all together. But what I think is most shocking is not Volo's turn, not that his motivations don't make sense and will never make sense. It's that now you're expecting me to understand that generationally, somewhere hundreds of years down the line, that lineage does a heel turn 15 times over to make Cynthia. Which also means that Lady Silene does a reverse heel turn to heel turn again to later become Cyrus. If Americans can't process that their ancestors once owned slaves, I can't imagine the existential dread of, my ancestor tried to do a Pokemon genocide. Now, I saw some of the footage from Scarlet and Violet. I saw the starters and I felt like I looked at nothing. For a long time, Pokemon has made me feel broken in a way that Yuri on Ice did years ago. That I feel like I look at these games and I just don't feel the same way that I used to. I don't feel the exuberant joy that I used to. I don't feel anything. And I don't think it's a matter of me growing up. I don't think it's a matter of me not enjoying these games. I think it's just time to understand that sometimes the things you love can be bad. And that's a bitter pill to swallow. It always will be. But sometimes the things you love just aren't what you expect them to be. And sometimes it's okay to say no. I will still always cherish the games that carried me through some of my darkest days, and some of the games that let me reconnect with friends on a level that I didn't think games could, which is really what games are at their best. But sometimes it's okay to look at something and realize that it's time to move on, that there's other pastures everywhere, and that these things that were once definitely made for you aren't made for you anymore. So that's my issue with Pokemon. I hope you enjoyed this longer video from me, and I hope that you enjoyed a little bit of Spicy Amanda. I'll try to be back much sooner. There's been some stuff going on in my personal life that, is not necessarily video appropriate, but I'd like to end this video by saying, what kind of stuff would you guys like to see from me? What kind of content is something that you'd like to hear me talk about? So if you have any suggestions, let me know in Yield comments. I'm also so close to 100 subscribers, and if you guys help me get there, we will absolutely do an AMA. So Thank you all so much, and I will see you again much, much sooner. Bye.